How's it going, you guys? It's Scott with Everyday Home Repairs. Now, dry pouring concrete has been a bit of a trend here on YouTube over the last few years. Sidewalks, slabs, landings, a lot of different DIY projects just put the dry concrete mix and sprinkle some water on top and it's as good as done. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that and I do not recommend doing that for a slab. But did you know when it comes to setting 4x4 posts in concrete, that is actually exactly what the instructions say if you have a hole less than 30 inches. So for this 50-pound Quikrete rapid set, which is super common for setting a post, you can see pour dry mix into the hole until it's approximately 3 inches to 4 inches from the top of the hole. Now a little bit lower down, it calls out that you can do this for anything less than 30 inches. I've always been a bit skeptical that that water on the surface is actually going to pull down through. So that's exactly what we're going to test out here. I have two different versions. One we're going to do exactly as the instructions say, and the second is actually feedback from you guys. So let's jump into it. So here are our two tests. We have test one, which is the standard by the directions. We only have 16 inches in the 7-gallon pail. It's right at the top of the viewing glass. And I'll go ahead and fill our water. The 50-pound Quikrete rapid set calls for about 1 gallon per 50-pound bag, but it does say depending on your conditions. So I'm going to try to fit 1.5 gallons into this. We'll see how that works out. Now for test 2, this is going to be kind of a half and half. And this was feedback from a past video that we did on setting a 4x4 post, where a lot of you said you poured half in, filled half your water up, then poured the other half of your dry mix, and then poured water on top, and then use some rebar to go ahead and mix that in the hole. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. And then we'll let both of these set up for 4 hours, and we'll see how consistent is the concrete top to bottom for each of these examples. Now, other best practices, just know when you're digging your hole, it should be 3 times the width of your post. 4x4 posts are 3.5 inches wide, so your diameter of your hole should be 10.5 inches. And then for depth, you'd want 1/3 of the post in the ground compared to 2/3 above the ground. But do not forget to take into account your frost line. I know I used to live in Illinois and I have to go down 36 inches. Down here in Georgia, 12 inches is actually more than enough from a frost line. So I would be still sinking 2 foot into the ground because this is a 6-foot post. So I want 1/3 down into the ground. So let's go ahead and start pouring our water in and see how does that actually penetrate through using these viewing glasses. On the left-hand side, I'll add the water on top of the dry mix, and then we'll add the water halfway through, then add more dry mix and complete it off with some water on top and mix it with a piece of rod, as you guys suggested in our last video. Now this is a 30-minute time lapse. The first 30 minutes, and I was able to add the complete 1.5 gallons to both sides and then just let that water pull down through. Now you'll see on the left-hand side, all dry mix with water on top, it continues to pull lower and lower, while the right-hand side started much, much lower, but it seems to be progressing a little bit slower. And at the end of the 30 minutes, we still have plenty of standing water, both on test 2 and on test 1. Now I'm going to give this a total of 4 hours setting. We'll cut the buckets open and see what the results are. All right, after 4 hours, now let's go ahead and cut these guys open right away. Test number 2, which actually had the dry mix water, and a little mixing, still has standing water after 4 hours. And the one which was all the concrete dry mix and then water on top has fully soaked in, although there does look to be a little bit of a water leak there. But I do not see any dry spots on test 1. We see a little bit on test 2. So let's cut these open and see what the results are. So I just use my angle grinder with a little cutoff wheel here and open these up. Interesting thing is on this first test, remember just the water on top, I can actually see water leaking out the bottom. So that means we got water all the way down through that dry mix, which is encouraging and kind of surprising. I didn't expect it to do that for at least the test 1. Now moving on to test 2, there is some water in the top there I need to dump out. And then I'll just open things up so we can see these side by side and compare the results. So overall, pretty interesting results. Test 1, where we had all the dry mix and then just the water on top and let it actually soak through. And then test 2, filled it half full of dry mix, then put water in, filled the rest away with dry mix, and then water on top. This one had standing water on the top after the 4 hours being set, and then this one was soaked all the way through. What we do see is actually the second test, where we are poking with the rebar, trying to mix it up, actually did a worse job. there was dry pack on the bottom and still dry concrete left in our bucket, while I had a full saturation of water all the way through test 1, which is pretty interesting. And when we do a measurement, I have about 14.5 or 15 inches of mixed concrete now here, and kind of 12 inches up to about 10 inches over on our second test. So we had less water penetration. Not sure really why that was. Maybe that first mix here kind of blocked off the rest of the water we added up top, so it wasn't able to penetrate all the way down. While here, we had all the water on top and it just kept working its way through the concrete dry pour and then fully saturated it. This is only about half the distance that they call out that you can do a dry pour. So if you had 30 inches, I do think that even this side would struggle to pull that water all the way through, especially because these buckets are the best case scenario where the water sits on top and then fully pulls through, opposed to being in the ground, especially if the ground is dry, where the ground would start to soak up some of that water, where you would not get all the water pulling through your dry mix. Now, usually when I've done these in the past, they've been pretty brittle. We are supposed to be able to put this under load in 4 hours. So I have a 2-pound sledge, and I'm just gonna give it some light taps to see how strong either of these are and if they overall are pretty brittle at this stage. Now, I do see cracks kind of all over this one, so we'll see if those open right up. Yeah, and this is what I've seen in the past, is you might get full saturation all the way through, but the mix is pretty brittle. Now, 4 hours is supposed to carry a load. This is a bit of an aggressive test where you'd want to let it cure for longer than that, but these are some pretty light taps. There, it's opening up. So what are my takeaways? Overall, the test number 2, which a lot of you guys gave the feedback of mixing in that hole, it didn't seem to have any advantages and possibly some disadvantages compared to just filling your hole with the actual concrete dry mix and then just letting the water work its way through. Now, the biggest drawback of either of these methods is I think you get inconsistent results, and it really depends on the ground around your hole, how much that's going to soak up, because if that soaks up a lot of the water you have standing on top of your dry mix, you're not going to get much penetration, and that's why we get such inconsistent results. Sometimes it works pretty good. It saturates down 16, 18, 20 inches or more, and other times maybe it only goes down about 6 or 8 inches because the ground really soaks up the rest of that water. So if you want the best chance of success in setting a post, I would do a wet mix. I know it's going to take more time. You're hand mixing it in a wheelbarrow, but that is going to give you the most consistent results and just be a overall better outcome for you. Now, if you have a concrete slab coming up, maybe a patio, a slab for a shed, maybe just a sidewalk, check out our DIY slab build guide. And this is going to walk you through the complete process so you can get the best results possible and save a ton of money taking on those projects yourself. You can check a link in the description or just scan this QR code if you're watching on your TV. And that's going to give you comparisons of different types of mixers that you can use. And I actually have time, material, and cost breakdowns from my own slab project, so you can apply those and get the plans in place for your own project. Now, if you want to see that full start to finish step-by-step concrete slab project, check out this video right here. I'll walk you through every step in the process so you can take on that DIY slab project at your own house. So thanks for joining me on this video, and we'll catch you on that next one. Take care.